inka to makam. I just want to say miššix, iitiy, shiiyiw. That means Happy New Year. And it's been a while since I've made one of these, but I've decided to get back on it. And let's start the new year off with a new video for rumshan. So this is going to be talking about rumshan minimal pairs, and that's basically just to examine how changing one sound in a word can change the entire meaning. And there are lots of sounds in rumshan that we do not have in English. And they might sound similar to an English ear, but we're going to really look into these pairs of words and see how very important it is to distinguish a lot of the sounds that we are not familiar with. So I would say if you have not seen my rumshan alphabet video, you should see that first because it describes all the sounds and it has the alphabet that I use, the orthography that I'm using in this video. So I'll link that in the description later. Let's start. So first off, length is important, and we'll see why a short vowel and a long vowel changes so much. So for example, let's look at this first word, mor. So it's a past tense marker. I'll go into each example later. But there's a similar word that's mor, and that means long ago. So mor and mor, very similar. But here's a sentence that has both of these words. Mor was kawtakiy. So long ago, Kairi got on top of her. Sounds like an interesting sentence, but there is a story that explains why he's getting on top of someone. So you can hear mor was kawtakiy, how the length of a vowel changes. So that's one example. A lot of times the length of a vowel also determines if it is the verb form or the noun form. So let's look at iitiy. So in the square brackets, I have the vowel that does not appear surface level. I've talked about this a couple of times in my other videos, but if you don't understand, you should look at those other ones. But basically, if you want to say to be hungry, iitiy, you don't say the a unless you put some kind of suffix on it. So iitiy means to be hungry, but iitiy means hunger. So iitiy and iitiy. So ka itkanin, I'm hungry. Ka iitiy, my hunger. So usually, since it's one's a verb, one's a noun, once you put it in a full sentence, you can really hear the difference if it's either to be hungry or hunger, because verbs have certain suffixes that go with it. Nouns have different suffixes that go with it. So once you put it in a full sentence, it's a lot easier to distinguish. But surface level, if you want to say what's hungry, what's to be hungry, you say iitiy, and hunger is iitiy. Now the vowel length is very important. Let's look at something else. Chewor means to sit. This is the regular word for to sit. Chewor. Now there's a process in rumshan, and we have chewor instead of a double W. We have a double E. Chewor. So chewor versus chewor. So there is a process in rumshan when you lengthen the vowel, then you are saying something like to go along. So you're saying someone is doing that verb while they are moving. So for example, chewor means he's just sitting, it's just sitting, she's just sitting, whoever. Chewor. Now if you say chewor, it means it's going along sitting. Like a dog is walking and sits, gets up and sits, or like a musical chair, some kind of situation like that where you would use chewor. So this is length. Now here is a pair of consonants that are important too. So they don't actually sound very alike, even though they're written very similarly. It's the T and retroflex T. So there's T and Ch. So the T with a dot under retroflex T, Ch, sounds a lot like the CH. We'll get into that next, but just to show the difference between the T and retroflex T, even though they're similar in writing. So look at this. Turra. It means like earth, land, ground. And there's also the word for thunder. Turra. So there's turra. Very similar. The only difference is the T. So let's look. So they're both nouns. So we can say the earth, shaturra, and the thunder, shaturra, shaturra, shaturra. Very similar, written very similarly. But once you train your ears long enough, you can hear a distinct difference between turra and churra. So let's look at something else. Let's look at uncle and sleep. Etten, etchen, etten, etchen. Should have said this earlier, but to make the retroflex T, you curl your tongue back so the bottom of the tip of the tongue is touching the roof of your mouth. So etten, etchen. So retroflex T is a very noisy sound. Etchen. So ka etten, ka etchen. So my uncle, I'm sleeping. Ka etten, ka etchen. So once you start to produce that sound, you can really feel the difference between etten, etchen. So look at something else. Cut and cut. So they're both verbs, but the thing is, the hidden vowel, they're the same. They're different. So once you put in a full sentence or inflect it with a suffix, then it's very easy to tell which verb you're talking about. So like wakatunin, finished, and wakatrunin, it was crushed. So even though I know I said like the hidden vowel for cut, to crush, is e, just trust me on this, but once you put a u in it, it just changes the meaning a little bit. It just means like it wasn't on purpose, like it was accidental. So wakatunin, wakatrunin, it finished and it was crushed. So that's the last example for T and ch. So look at something that's very difficult to tell for a lot of people. It's ch and ch. Now they're very, very similar sounding. So the ch is like the ch in English. The ch is the retroflex T. So look at chim and chim. So chim, 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 to bump one's head. Chim, like a whale. So let's hear it in a sentence. Kachimunin, kachim. So once you listen to it a lot, you can see that the retroflex T it has like a more hollow sound. Kachim, kachim. And it's a lot easier to say an E sound with the CH. Chim, chim. So you just have to produce it yourself a lot to understand. Let's look at foam and down feather. So pooch, 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 pooch. So pooch duck, pooch duck, pooch duck, pooch duck. So even here it sounds super similar. I don't even know how Harrington figured it out on how to distinguish the sounds over time. It's a great job. But if you listen carefully, pooch duck, like the ch has a more chirpy sound, I would say, and the ch kind of forces you to make a more lower pitched sound. It's really hard to tell, but over time you will get it. So let's look at ichk and ichk. So ichk, to hook with your horns like a bull. It's like charging you. They hook you violently with their horns. Or ichk, to have hiccups. So you say ichuk, ichkunt. It means like the bull is going around or running around, hooking people violently and gouging them with their horns. Very violent. Or you say ichek, ichkent. Means like someone is walking around hiccuping, I don't know, walking down the street and you hear something constantly. That's what this andative is meant to be. But if you listen carefully, ichkunt, ichkent, over time the sound will become more clear to you, but you just have to practice yourself. But this is a pair of sounds that people have the most trouble with. So let's look at s and sh. Written very similarly, but the thing is, a lot of English speakers will probably be able to hear the difference very well because we have these two phonemes in our own language, S and SH. So let's look at wis and wish. So wis means to spill and to throw out, but the thing is, usually it appears with the hidden vowel. So in a sentence, you usually say wisse, which usually does not happen. Sometimes it's on and off. Sometimes Isabel Meadows gives it with the E, without the E. But wis does appear by itself. So say im ka wash a wis means I'm always throwing it out, meaning like a drink, like I don't know, like there's a disgusting drink and you're throwing it out because you just don't want to drink it. Like im ka wash a wis. So the other word im ka wash a wish means like I'm checking up on her. So wish means something like to look carefully, to observe, to check up. It can be like a doctor checking up on a patient. It could be like a health inspector investigating something. Just has to look carefully. So im ka wash a wis, im ka wash a wish. So you can hear this difference clearly. So let's look at another pair that's like really important. There's miššix and there's miššix. Miššix means to be pretty. Miššix means to be good. So this is like a classic example of the S and the SH sound. So wa miskinin, she became pretty. Like she grew up and she became pretty, or she glowed up. Or wa miškinin, he became good, like a good person. Kind of like the Grinch when his heart grows, like wa miškinin or wa miskinin. So that's another example. Another one comes up is chuts. Chuts means to get manzanita, like kind of plant. But chutus is the noun, manzanita. Chuts means to get manzanita. So you can say chutsust is a manzanita gatherer, someone who grows it or gets it, whatever. There's also chutsh. Chutsh means to be green. Sometimes it shows up as chutk also, but chutsh means to be green. Chutshusht, green. So, forgot to put the transition on the pictures, but here's a pair of consonants that are also very tricky for a lot of people's sh and sh. So the S with a dot under means it's a retroflex S. So you do that by flipping your tongue backwards, and then you make the S sound with your flipped tongue. So sh, SH, and sh sounds very whistly, very thin. In the notes, Isabel Meadow calls it grueso, which means like thick. So there's sh and sh. So you really have to train your ears to hear this one. So let's look at shikkar and shikkar. So shikkar means to be a teenage girl, like a young woman. So you can say wa shikranin. You usually say this for like a girl. She's like, oh, she grew up and became like an adolescent. Wa shikranin. Now there is a word for to be dirty on the body, which means wa shikranin. It got filthy, like if you were rolling around in mud. Well, though it says body because there are other words to mean like to be dirty on the face, like to be dirty on the face, like chekresh. It means like to be dirty on the face. Shikranin specifically means to be for the body. So shikranin. Let's look at push and push. So push means like to singe, to scorch. This verb is actually a little bit inconsistent. It seems like Isabel Meadow didn't know it very well, but you can say wa pushunin. It got singed, at like her hair. Wa pushunin. Now, the other word push means to be filled with food, like when you're done eating. So push, wa pushanin, wa pushanin. He got full from eating so much. So pushunin, pushanin. You can kind of hear the whistling sound in the sh now. So look at this one. Kush means soap root. So this is the plant, soap root. You used to make brushes out of it. Could also use it for soap, why it's called soap root. And there's also the word for to scrub. Like usually means to scrub your clothes on a washboard. So kush, and kush. So kush really sounds like I guess like waves crashing on the shore. And kush just feels like a very thin, whistly sound. So you can say katork kushiyom. Katork kushiyom. I'm washing with a soap root. Or you can say kakushapin kauch. I'm scrubbing my head, like you're showering, scrubbing your head with shampoo. Katork kushiyom. Kakushapin kauch. So it's very possible that kush and kush are related, because it seems like kush they use to wash their clothes, and kush means to scrub your clothes on a washboard. Very possible that these two are related. So let's look at s and sh. So usually, I will say usually, they are interchangeable. However, it is important to distinguish them both because sometimes they're not interchangeable. Because it seems like, for example, depends on dialect. For example, the word for me is kush. But it seems like a lot of people, like Lauren, forgot her last name, but she is another Rumshen informant, and she says cuss for me. Cuss. These two are interchangeable. You can also say sininku, shininku, both mean child. But in this case, s and sh, they need to be distinguished in these cases. So let's look at shiiyiw and shiiyiw. So shiiyiw means to be watery. So ga wash shiiyiw. I watered it down, mean like you have a soup, it's too thick, you water it down. Ga wash shiiyiw. You want to say to be faded, like faded clothes. Ga wash shiiyiw. So like I made it faded. Like for example, if I don't know, you did some color change to your skirt. So it's very possible these two words are related. But in this case, the shiiyiw and shiiyiw are very important to distinguish. So look at sar and shar. So sar means to pray. It's from Spanish rezar. And there's the word for raven, shar. Sometimes the hidden vowel is E, sometimes it's A. But I'll explain later. For example, you can say iitiy saren. Let's go pray. Let's pray at a church or something. Iitiy saren. You can say on the raven, sharetk. Sometimes she says sharatk. It's unclear which one is which. But in these two cases, it's important to distinguish. But the thing is, since one of them is a vowel, one of them is a noun, once you use it in a full sentence, it's pretty easy to distinguish which one is which. But in a dictionary sense, if you're just looking at the entry, it's important to distinguish. Let's look at mus and mush. So mus means to warm up. Mush means like to have big boobs, basically. Or I guess to just have boobs. But let's see, arramusei means he already warmed up. Arramusei. Now if you want to say arramushei, means she already like grew breasts. She became busty. So arramushei. So these two, very, very different meanings. Do not mix them up. So let's do a triple whammy. S, sh, sh. These are the three kinds of S's we have in Rumshen. So aus, aus, aus. Aus, aus, aus. So they all are all verbs. They have different hidden vowels. But in this case, in the future tense, you don't usually put the hidden vowel. So charoy kuka wash aus. Tomorrow I'll salted. Charoy kuka aus. Tomorrow I'll yawn. Charoy kuka aus. Tomorrow I'll gather lima beans. So if for the case of to salt, you need like an it or like a third person object sense. So that's why there's a wash. In that case, you can like tell which one is which by listening to this full sentence. But this is a distinction that's very necessary. So let's look at is, ish, ish. Is, ish, ish. All mean very different things. So call isuyom with my hand. It's like is means your hand. It could also mean to bewitch, to like poison someone. But I decided to use this definition. Is. Ish means still. So ish a emecht. It's still alive. Ish a emecht. So let's look at what or that. This ish is very rare. It's appeared a couple of times, but I still think it's a real word. It's just not commonly used. So inta ish umun. What is that thing flying? Inta ish umun. So is, ish, ish. These three distinctions are very important. So let's look at ch and sh. I think it's not that hard to mix these two up. But just to go over, because they are a little bit similar phonologically, let's look at paich and paish. So paich means to be constipated. Paich means to be pregnant. So look at kapaichin. I'm constipated. Kapaichin. I'm knocked up. Kapaichin. Kapaichin. They start off very similar, but over time, once you hear the ch and the sh, I think it's very easy to hear the difference. So let's look at cheat and sheet. So to dance and to fight. Kawatin cheat. Kawatin sheetemsh. So in the full sentence, of course, it's a little difficult to mix them up because when you want to say to fight, you usually have to put the M at the end. And the M at the end, like in sheetemsh, means like each other. So even though you're trying to say I'm going over to fight, you kind of have to say kawatin sheetemsh because you're implying that you're going to fight with someone else. So kawatin cheat. Kawatin sheetemsh. So look at chun and shun. Chun means song. Shun means to stretch. So you can say kachun, my song. Kashunup, I'm stretching myself. That's what the P is there for. It's a reflexive. Kachun, kashunup. So these two sounds are not too hard to mix up, but just to put an example. So the last slide I have is k and h. So in English, we do not have the h sound. It is in Spanish. It's in German. So like jota. That's Spanish for J, h. Or you can say bach. Bach. That's the X sound. So k and h. You might be able to mix them up if someone is speaking fast. But let's go over how you can mix them up. So chao and kao. Chao means to fetch. Kao means to air out. It can also mean beach, but here I decided to choose the verb. Chao and kao. So gawash chao. Gawash chao. Gawash kao. Gawash kao. You might be able to mix them up if you can't really hear the X correctly, but over time it will be easier to distinguish. So look at ak and ach. Ak, ach. Arakawash akiki. Arakawash akiki. Arakawash akiki. Arakawash akiki. So these might be really easy to mix up because even the hidden vowel is the same. Aki and achi. So arakawash akiki. Arakawash akiki. I think if someone is speaking fast, it might be a little difficult. But of course, with more practice, it will become easier. So look at wak and wak. So this might be a little bit hard to distinguish because the X comes right before a K. So wak, wak, wa wakunin, wa wakunin, wa wakunin, wa wakunin. So let's hear that again. Wa wakunin, wa wakunin. So if someone is speaking fast, it might be a little bit hard. But here's the fourth example I decided to put. Uk and uk. So this is probably really different to hear a difference because the X comes right after a K. Uk, uk. So you really have to train your ears to hear it. But since, of course, one is a vowel, one is a noun, it will be a lot easier to distinguish in a full sentence. So wa ukanin, it was moved. Ukhakai, friends. So uk. Hopefully, once you start speaking to yourself more, it will be a lot easier. But shururu makam. Thank you for listening. Happy New Year, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you.